Well, good afternoon. We just concluded our fourth Lifeflow gathering with this cohort, and we did the pilgrimage, which is the discipleship component of the Lifeflow process, and it was a great time together. So first, we want to unpack with you a little bit of what we talked about during the session, and then conclude with the assignments that we've asked the participants to accomplish before our next gathering, which is coming up soon, June 11 to 12. So you want to start off talking about what we did last day?
Yeah, we did pilgrimage, and we talked about the disciple-making process, and Sam and I are really encouraged with where these guys are at and how they're processing the material, and so it was really, I think, a very good practical conversation about making disciples, discipleship, and I think a couple of the key things that were embraced were the relational aspect of the process, that it is a process, just helping them understand that, or not helping them understand, but reminding them that this is an ongoing process. So even as we're looking to implement Lifeflow into our churches, that it's not going to be accomplished tomorrow. It's just an ongoing process, and I think that brought a measure of liberty to them, and then also just culminating with thinking through what does a way of life look like, and what are some samples of a way of life, and so I just felt the conversation was they were very engaged in it, and I just was encouraged by how they were responding to it.
Yeah, we in the last session, Scott walked through some of the destination of this journey, which is a way of life lived out in the local church, and we gave them 4 different examples. One was the way of life at Weathersfield, and Scott kind of articulated that to them and gave them a handout. And we did the 5 stones. Then we didn't talk through it, but included in the resources was the Praxis Code. And then the last one was actually a book that we were asking them to read before our next training, which if you haven't read it, we actually really recommend it. It's a great book. It's called The Common Rule, and it describes a way of life, 4 daily habits, 4 weekly habits that both help us to embrace love for God and love for others and resist the things in this world that keep us from loving God and loving others. And it's just a great book. I think it gave them a real good picture. Already we kind of referenced the book quite a bit, and it was a good picture of a modern example of a rule of life. And so when you're meeting with your pastor, participant, person, when you're meeting with them, please feel free to bring up that book and to see what their reactions are. I think it'd be a great conversation.
Yeah, it's a brand new book that's out, and like Sam said, if you haven't read it, you may want to think about reading it. I don't know where you're at in your church with regards to sharing way of life, but it could be a real tangible thing to help your people understand what a way of life looks like, and give maybe even some practical steps into helping them practice a way of life. So, yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah. So that's the first of 4 assignments that we gave for them to accomplish before June 11 and 12. So read through the Common Rule. The second one was to meet with you and to receive from you their executive summary. So really that's an assignment for you to finish up the executive summary. I think most of the pastors already had completed the Phase 2 dialogue. And so after the Phase 2 dialogue, that's when you take your notes from those 2 dialogues and the self-assessment that the pastor completed. And from those, put together the executive summary that you're going to hand to the pastor when you meet with them and just kind of talk through. You have any guidance on how to best frame that conversation, the executive summary conversation?
Yeah, when you write out your executive summary, you're obviously sharing some words of encouragement with them, but then maybe some things that you're wanting to recommend to them. One of the things I always do when I do an executive summary, I just kind of want to acknowledge that I'm just taking information that I've gathered from two interviews. So my understanding of them is limited. So I want to say up front to them, say, look, here's what I've heard. You feel free to tell me if I'm hearing right or not hearing right. I don't want to come across as if I'm the authority on this person when I'm really basically, in most cases, only giving them feedback based on 2 interviews. So at the same time, I have found that as I've prayed going into that conversation, that a lot of times you do get a good read on the person with their strengths and their areas of where they need to work. And then the other thing would be, I think, as you walk with them through that, to just ask them to then write a personal development plan. A lot of them were asking, well, what does that look like? And my encouragement is that they would write something up in a format that is helpful to them. So I don't think they need to follow a certain template or whatever, but based on what you've shared with them, what are some things that they want to do to address those things? And let them have the freedom to write that up in a manner that is something that they can, it's something that's going to be meaningful to them, but then also lead them into maybe implementing that in some KRAs or something like that. So that's basically my advice.
Yeah, that's going to frame your future coaching sessions with them. You've already done the bulk of the work in the first 3 dialogues. And so after this, really, it's a pretty natural follow-up process. So the personal development plan, you're just going to be checking back in. Hey, how's it going? How can I help? And so the bulk of the work after the executive summary for you has been done. So good job so far. You guys really been doing good work. So I appreciate your investment.
By far the best we've had. Every time it gets better, but I think you guys, we were really encouraged. No one's really behind the 8 ball with regards to the coaching thing. So, and I know from hearing from them, it's very appreciated. So thank you.
That's right. That's right. So let's see, what else do we have for assignments here? They're going to write the personal development plan. And lastly, they're going to prepare a final draft. They're going to prepare lesson 1 in infusion for teaching. And so we had a lot of conversation about infusion, what its purpose is, how they're going to deliver it in their church. And so all we're asking them to do is to work through their first session. And some of them already have started to teach it to their elders. Some are planning to do it next fall. So feel free to share with them how you worked that process out in their church, in your church. So those are the four assignments. They're going to be doing lesson 1 in infusion, preparing to teach it. They're going to be meeting with their coach for the executive summary, writing their personal development plan, and then reading the common rule. Those are the assignments. And Scott's smiling, so he obviously has a question for me.
So who's going to go further, Sixers or Celtics?
Oh, that was easy.
Huh?
Do you remember over the last 12 games, how many games have the Sixers beat the Celtics?
Well, they may not face each other.
Well, it's been a few months since we've had a championship in Boston, so we're due.
Yeah, right.
Clearly, the Celtics are going farther.
Yeah.
Take it. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Celtics, NBA champs.
Well, hopefully, the Red Sox will win another game this year. Take care, guys.
All right. Talk to you later, guys.